Hello, it's Anna Beckwith from Never Mind the Buzzwords here once again. Over the last several months we've done quite a lot of work on organisation culture with various clients that we've been working with. So what I would like to bring you now is 3 clips on culture. This first one is going to be about organisational culture. How do you define it? What exactly is it? The second clip is going to focus on culture and subculture. In any organisation, large or small, there will be the overall company culture and there will be various subcultures within that organisation. The third clip is going to look at cultural change. How do we bring that about? Why do we bring that about? What makes it a success? And what potentially can make it fail and fall at the first hurdle. So for now then, we're going to look at culture in quite generic terms. The biggest key point in this clip is this. Your organisation's culture is not what you say it is, it's what it is. Now let me explain that, albeit in a roundabout way. First of all, let's start by thinking about culture in very general terms. Often when we talk about culture just in conversation, what we are meaning is something to do with national culture. So let's just pick a country, somewhere that I've always been fascinated in, always wanted to go to and haven't yet had the chance, is Mexico. So Mexican culture, from my point of view, when I think about Mexico, I think about the first thing that comes to mind is the traditional costume, the large hats. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but that's what springs to mind. The music, the mariachi bands, the colour, the vibrancy of the people there, the history and heritage, the Spanish influence, and prior to that, the ongoing history of the indigenous people of that area of the world. And then of course there's the landscape itself, there's the architecture. All of these things combine in my mind to form a clear picture of Mexican culture. Oh, and the food as well, that's always a big thing for me. So why on earth, if we're looking at organisational culture, am I looking at the culture of Mexico, or indeed any other country? Well, when we boil it down, what actually contributes to our impression of the culture of a country? It's going to be things like what people believe, what people actually do, so how they behave. How does society structure itself? Is it a very hierarchical society where the elderly are valued, for example? There's also going to be aspects about the very environment. In a cultural context, it's going to be the architecture, for example. Numerous factors are going to contribute to our impressions of the culture of a country. No big surprise, actually, that similar factors are going to contribute to the culture of an organisation. So, within an organisation, what is it that people believe? Not what you would like to think they believe. What do people actually believe? What do people actually do? What are their behaviours like? How does the organisation structure itself? Is it hierarchical and a very permission-seeking organisation? Is it one where there's a flatter structure and people have more autonomy in their day-to-day work lives? Similar factors will come into play. Now, let me just come back to that point about culture, organisational culture. Any culture, arguably, is not just what you say it is, it's what it is. Now, let's just take a country's culture, and in the interest of not offending anybody, I am going to take Scottish culture because that's where we're from, that's where I live now. So let's imagine that there's an aspect of Scottish culture that is the glossy brochure. This is the aspects of Scottish culture that we want people to know about, and this is what we like to say about ourselves. So, it's going to be things like a proud history of the Scottish people. It's going to be things about the food, the countryside, the music, the language of Scotland, Gaelic, and indeed Doric and different cultures within Scotland even. There's going to be a number of positive factors that are promoted overseas, and rightly so. Come and visit, it's a lovely place to be. St Andrew's Day is another thing that's heavily promoted in order to put forward Scottish culture as being different from the rest of British culture. So that's what we like to say about ourselves, that's the glossy brochure side of things. There's also the kind of traveller's guide version. All of this is true, but we also have other things that are actually going on. And maybe those are some things that we wouldn't necessarily want to tell people about ourselves. So sadly, amongst some sections of the community, there is a religious divide which can lead to conflict and violence on occasions. Unfortunately, Scotland has the worst health record in Europe. We are not great at healthy eating and exercise. Unfortunately, there is a culture where young people will go out at the weekend and drink far too much, with its resulting healthcare problems and social problems and so forth. Every country will find exactly the same thing. There's the glossy brochure version, this is what we say to bring the tourists in, and there's some other stuff that's actually going on. There's the traveller's guide version. So here's the thing. In the context of your company organisation, what also is going on? What's the glossy brochure version? Here's what we like to say about ourselves. And what's the traveller's guide version? What are some of the things that are actually going on? So let me give you an example. A company might well say, well, we have a culture of innovation and challenge, and we encourage our people to be proactive about challenging the status quo and coming up with new ideas. That's what we like to say. People who are actually working in that organisation might say, yeah, right, that's what they say. What actually happens is that as soon as you come up with an idea, somebody will say, oh yeah, we've done that before and it didn't work. You put your hand up to challenge the status quo, boof, somebody will stop you in your tracks. So this is what's actually happening. On the other hand, sometimes it might be an organisation saying, we've got a really positive culture, a really proactive culture. That is a good thing. However, sometimes that can reach a tipping point where it's not particularly helpful. So what might actually be happening in some situations is that somebody will put forward an idea and everybody is afraid to challenge that idea in case they're seen as being negative. Again, where is that tipping point there? So bear that in mind. Your organisation's culture is not what you say it is, it's what it actually is. If you're doing any sort of analysis on your organisational culture, be thinking of the glossy brochure version. What do we like to say? What are the good things that are going on? And what's actually happening? What do we see in terms of what people believe, how people present themselves, what people are actually doing? How is it coming out in their behaviours? That's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Culture isn't just what you say it is, it's what it actually is.